welcome to Vespertine. In today's episode, we take on the ever-evolving world of hip-hop music, in particular, the role of the producer. Today's guest is a self-taught drummer with a background in punk music turned beatmaker for rising hip-hop stars in both his home country of Iceland and the United States. The artist's name is FRÍO, but his real name is Huginn Goði Kolbeinsson, and he is in fact my brother. I spoke to him about how he started in music and his approach towards making beats and creating relationships with both talent at home and abroad. So Huginn, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
I think before we kind of continue on, I'd like to mention that FRÍO here with us is actually the one that made the theme song for the show, and we're very much appreciative of that. I think it's a pretty good track.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So just to kind of get straight into it, as we've talked in the intro, you've had experiences both here and abroad in the current genre of music that you're working with, but you've also done something that's a bit more on the live performance side. But what was it that got you into making beats and in the production side of it?
Well, I had been in a band, I'd say for like 2.5 years, from like 9th grade to like the first year in high school, and I was the drummer of the band, and we had some minor successes, but still we participated in the Battle of the Bands, got into the finals, and shortly after that I kind of felt that my role as just being a drummer wasn't really justifying my capabilities in music. So I decided to look into other possibilities, and I got introduced to producing. And drumming is a good kind of like background for that kind of a style of making music. A lot of just groove based and stuff. So I started back in 2015 learning the piano while learning to produce on Logic Pro X.
Right, yeah. And so, especially with the drumming, I find this quite interesting. The fact that you are kind of self-taught in that regard. You're not, as a lot of other, maybe some drummers go and, learn on it through sort of academics. But you've really felt, and that's kind of transcended into your beat making through those sorts of rhythms. Something that, again, with your production, it's something that you've kind of gotten yourself into based on your own merit. And
yeah. It's learning the drums by myself. Most of the the inspirations I got was just from listening to tracks and kind of just sitting by the drum set and trying to emulate the groove. And then of course YouTube and stuff, cover of songs. They have videos of that there, but like I always felt like my capabilities were kind of limited by the drum set. If I pushed myself a little bit harder, I would have, of course, gotten a lot better on the drums. But sitting down in front of a computer, where if you have a background in drumming, like you can just fill those extra interesting kind of like rhythm pockets. Without necessarily having to play them by yourself. Which I don't see if it's any lesser doing that than playing the drums themselves, but like just there's really no limitations in what you can do in a digital audio workstation. So for me that was something that kind of gravitated me towards that world. And plus working with melodies and stuff, I don't really know how to play the piano like that, but using MIDI in Logic, you can kind of just write it. And over the years, I learned how to play some of the piano, but like with chords and stuff, I usually just lay that down by writing them in, and then bass lines and top melodies and stuff I do, just on the MIDI keyboard. But yeah, there's really no limitations in what you can do.
Yeah. So I mean, you've talked about getting references from other sorts of music, and I know for a fact that you use a lot of samples in some of your work. But what was it what musical inspirations, maybe nothing that's needs to be too big, but something that kind of got you into of kind of finding your own way?
That's a good question. I would say that most of the stuff that I get inspired from, I don't always end up making, but then again, a lot of it I do make. Back when I was learning sampling and stuff, I was listening to a lot of Kanye West, and he used to produce majority of his music by chopping up samples and flipping them in an interesting way. Then again, also other producers like Madlib and Jay Dilla. Then I also had like huge inspiration from Drake's producer 40. Back like in 2015, they were making If You're Reading It's Just Too Late, which is probably like, if I'd say like that definitely like shaped up my taste for like unique sample kind of like flipping, but also not just like the beats aren't just about the sample, like samples are layered on top of chords and stuff. It's just like a very interesting project, like production wise, and like drum programming there. I really like use that as like a foundation for like when I was trying to find my own style for sure. But there's so many inspirations too, but other stuff that I get inspired from and I don't make is like Pink Floyd, Nirvana, but it's like I try to like every time I make something, as much as I'm inspired from something, and definitely have references and try to like not mimic, but you always try to like take a piece out of something good and then shape it up as your own. But yeah, I always try to like approach the production as like a blank slate,
as open as possible.
And like the more I think about what I'm going to try to make, I don't make that, but then again, in a session with an artist and they want a certain kind of sound, like for me that's easier. But when I'm like just on my own making something and trying to make something unique, like of course I get inspirations from something, but I just try to go in the flow, just like the subconscious world of music making, and let the sounds kind of like interest me and guide me forward.
Yeah, that's I think it's a very interesting way of approaching it. Now, as you alluded to earlier, you said that you kind of started around 2015, 2016, something along those lines, which in the music scene of beat making and all that, culminating with YouTube and online resources all over the place, it kind of exploded, I'd say, around this time. And what did you think of having all those resources at your disposal when realistically, I mean, you were working on the computer you had at home, and that wasn't necessarily built for any of these, not necessarily high tech things, but with a music like this focused? How was?
At first, I did have an okay computer to go at it at first, but I didn't like produce with my headset or anything or any speakers, like except for the speakers on my computer for like a year.
Yeah.
And that kind of like definitely didn't help me like learning mixing styles or anything, but just like you don't really need a whole lot of stuff to just get going and try to get the rhythm of things and stuff. It definitely helps having at least headsets to begin with, just so you can kind of like hear it, because once you export it into a WAV file and then listen onto your headset and you think, oh, the snare is like really loud on the speaker, it must sound like good in the headset.
Yeah.
And then you listen to it and it's basically just clipping, and like the only thing you can hear is the snare.
Yeah, exactly.
But back then I wasn't really looking at the master channel or whatever. It's like peaking. I feel like once you're like starting, just kind of like indulge yourself into everything about it, and just just do it, because like that's the main important thing. But you gotta come back and realize like what are the important things for things to be transparent between all systems.
Yeah.
And stuff, and something that people enjoy listening to. But to get started, like you don't have to focus on that 100%, I wouldn't say, but it does help a lot.
Yeah. Just a quick one. I mean, because I've in my own work, there's a lot of sort of little details that, when it comes to production, especially audio or whatever, that you kind of notice that you feel like, oh, I'm a bit limited in this way or whatever, and I really want to change this, but it's either, gotten out of my hands, or I'm incapable of doing it. Especially around those early times, was that something that you kind of learned to kind of avoid, or is that something that's always going to be there in the background, that you think that you could have done better, or things could have done better?
I'd say now I'm probably at that point in my career where like I'm not too unsure of myself, and and kind of like have found my way of always getting some product. But what's most important whenever you're working is just the source material, what you're working with. You know, if that's a sample or any kind of synth or any kind of like sounds. You know, I feel like once you've been going at it for a long time, you realize like, you know, you don't need to focus. You know, as I was saying, like, oh, it's good to, you know, keep the mix in mind and stuff. But you know, then again, like if the source material is good, whether it's, you know, drums, samples, any kind of like synths, or even vocals, like especially vocals, like if the source material is good to begin with, like there isn't any kind of limitations except for just, you know, this very technical kind of stuff, like, or more not even technical, just like, does this work, you know, and like am I doing it justice, and is it serving the song at all? But I do think like the source material is like your, you know, foundation for like things to actually sound good, and being able to have them processed in the way that you want to.
Yeah, so you've talked about it now of working with artists, and you now have the experience of working with artists from here in Iceland and then also abroad. But maybe I think particularly now we can maybe focus on the Icelandic scene, because especially at the same time where you're starting, with the boom across, you know, the whole rest of the world, but particularly in Iceland, in the sort of rap music that's now almost 10 years old, really, a sort of decade of loads of different artists that do kind of go around the same sort of lines, but they have their own unique twists, and I think a lot of it comes down from the production. And so there's a lot of people from your generation or a couple of years above that have kind of helped shape that. And thanks to these sort of technologies. But what has it felt working in that environment, and being with Iceland, being a very small country, has a very, you know, connected web of connections? How has it been getting to know these artists and then finding people to eventually collaborate with? What does it take to get you going with an artist and feel like you can work with them?
I mean, yeah, the scene here is, you know, has a lot of artists that are that have been going at it for a couple of years now, and a lot of them have a very good and interesting sound and have contributed to the music scene here quite a lot. I feel like I've always, you know, been a lot more inspired what Icelandic people can do based on what goes on in the world. I would say though my focus has always been, you know, trying to produce abroad. But I feel like I'm like most not challenged, but like when I hear an Icelandic person do something that I really like, I'm like, okay, wow, like this is really good, and like I kind of like take it more, you know, it's more to home, you know. So like, and I take a big pride in what musicians here have been able to do for ourselves, and also, you know, for abroad. But at the same time, as it's, you know, very inspiring, and a lot of people are doing interesting things. It's a small scene for sure, but it doesn't, you know, come with any limitations. But you know, a lot of people are doing it, you know, as a hobby, and a lot of people are doing it, you know, for real. I like to, you know, find someone that, like, you know, of course it's always good if someone is, you know, experienced in the field or has some kind of reach with their music, but at the same time, like I really just like to find someone that, like, you know, is doing it currently now, whether it's big or not, and if they're true to what they're doing, and you know, if they just got from the studio, you know, yesterday, they got something new from yesterday, not something that they did a year ago, but you know, haven't made songs consistently, you know, since then. So for me, like when I gravitate to someone, I just want to see a good work ethic, and an interesting kind of approach to making the music, and you know, delivering results, you know, because it doesn't have to always just, you know, you can deliver results and like, okay, but this isn't the song that I'm going to release, but it's a result, it's something that got done, and it was made, you know, not quick, but you know, made with just confidence and consistency in it. So, and there are a lot of people back here, you know, whether they are professionals or not, that do deliver those kind of results. So I'm always just keeping an eye on people that I feel inspire me and want me to, you know, contribute to, you know, their art.
That's good. And then just kind of to go from there, I mean, you've worked with different sorts of artists, and in recording in studio or working even sort of through great distance and all these sorts of things, but they always bring something, like you say, a sort of work ethic, but also different styles. How has it been kind of working within those different styles and possibly adapting? You know, how do you get the best of an artist who's even, you know, who may be a bit, who may know what they're doing, but also those that feel like that they're still in a sort of development? How has it been trying to get the best out of them from sort of the production side?
It all just depends on the person, because a lot of people are open for, you know, a lot more collaborations than others. A lot of people want to be coached, but a lot of people want to kind of steer the production. Not, you know, I don't mind that, but what I'm saying is like the collective idea of like the song, like they want to steer the direction, which is fine by me. I always feel like my role with an artist isn't necessarily taking any kind of control, but just, you know, what I prefer to do is, you know, have an artist by my side and we sit down and the artist kind of like shows me what he's been working on and what kind of songs he's been listening to recently, and try to like, you know, get inspiration from that and kind of like make something from scratch at the spot. You know, I've worked with, you know, a lot of different kind of styles, but like the majority of what I've been working on is definitely just hip hop. But I do have recently kind of like gotten more into, you know, some kind of hybrid between, I'd say kind of like, you know, hip hop and kind of like techno house kind of grooves, yeah. But like you couldn't necessarily kind of lean it in any other, you know, it's not too much hip hop and not too much, you know, techno pop or anything, but it's, yeah, more kind of just like a pop-esque about it.
Right.
But when I'm working with artists, you know, I really like to, you know, be able to be there hands-on and help them see their vision through, and kind of just, you know, be a middleman between, you know, getting the, you know, between the artist and then, you know, the product. So it really just depends on how open the artist is to, you know, want to communicate what he wants and like tell me freely what you want to do. And, you know, there's no one way to do this. So, and also the artist got to keep that in mind whenever I'm, you know, putting my 2 cents on it too. But then again, you know, I also work with artists that I really just got to send a beat to them and they know how to record themselves and they know how to produce and stuff. And that, for me, kind of like, you know, once I make the beat and I, you know, write out the song structure or, you know, produce the vocals and, you know, do the final mix and everything, you know, when I just send the beat, I feel like to a point where I can, you know, trust the other person to deliver. I feel like I finally kind of gained back like the ears of the listener.
Yeah.
Even though it's my beat, but, you know, I'm not too involved in the, you know, production side of it, unless, you know, besides the beat. So for me, like, I really enjoy that too, but I do want to, you know, and I do pride myself on being able to, you know, be that kind of one-way stop for the artist to, you know, achieve, you know, their results.
Exactly. Yeah. Someone on the sidelines that is both supportive but also engaging, and I actually like the answer of being able to be kind of in the seat of the listener once they've brought whatever their interpretation is, because then from there you are getting a whole different view on it, and you're going to be finding other entryways and other things to potentially add to it, which I find very interesting and inspiring. So having an open mind to these interpretations of different artists and different styles, would you say that, you know, this is a very important thing to keep in mind, is to be open? I mean, obviously if you're working with the same artists, but you can kind of create a bit of a relationship. But if you're wanting to kind of spread out to different genres, even keeping open mind and being encouraging, is it something to keep in mind then?
Some things don't need to be changed, but at the same time, you know, always keep an open mind for, you know, just a better direction with the song and the art. It doesn't hurt to try to change it, and then just kind of like, you know, just, you know, let it grow, you know, and listen to it and really, you know, is it working or not, and like, is it serving justice for it? But then again, like, you can't go too crazy on like, oh, we always gotta like make this like the most unique and stuff, because like there is a certain kind of formula to music. Not to say that you can't break it down and like, you know, do it your own kind of way. I'd say in hip hop, you definitely need to have some sort of, you know, familiarity,
Yeah.
with your product, but always have people be able to engage it in a different kind of way, or just make sure the soundscape and the sonics and everything is kind of like unique, and that's where like the aspect of challenging and switching it up comes in.
Yeah.
So
because it's something that you have developed, and that's something that you've kind of tested with in all different sorts of areas with different people. But would you say that the way that your career's going, because you've mentioned the pop idea of making it more of a product and knowing what you're doing, and then bringing that quality into it where it's enjoyable for the biggest group of people possible. I know you're not trying to not kind of betray your own roots and where you're coming from in terms of you wanting to do the stuff that you do versus something what other people want you to do. But how has that been of maybe finding a bit more cleaner through line through your music, or something that's a bit more approachable than even through your own genre?
It's been a long road, just to be able to have something that, as you said, like the bigger audience can kind of like get hip to. Here at home, that I like been around and work with in music, I feel like at least what they've told me, like I approach my style a little bit more cleaner than they.
Right.
Not in the sense of just mix or anything, but it's just like I really like to have something that's presentable. Not that their stuff isn't presentable at all, but they pride themselves of having kind of raw, kind of punk, which is in its own way amazing. You feel me? Definitely something that like I could do too, but everyone's approach is different. I've a little bit more rather to have it punk and raw. I've always wanted to have it clean, but at the same time there can be some grit to it and stuff. But I definitely kind of like not, it's not a limitation, it's just kind of style of like, if I want to have it kind of punk, I don't want to have it like too much, but just like to get that flavor. But that's more kind of like in my style of hip hop. Like as I mentioned earlier, I really listen a lot to If You're Reading This Is Too Late with Drake, and I feel like that's definitely my kind of sweet spot of having mostly in the production, what I'm saying is like to have that that grit and just like oomph in the production, but at the same time like it's mad kind of like coordinated poppy in a sense, but it's a very hip hop kind of way of approaching it, but with a clean kind of approach to it. But clean doesn't have to be better or anything. No, but it's just like maybe a little bit less complicated. With the complications there, I don't know how to explain it really.
No. I think what you're saying is that it's a bit more of kind of as we were talking about earlier, that there are mistakes and little things that you kind of pick up from behind the scenes that you wish that were a bit cleaner, a bit more approachable, but something you can't really do about it. But obviously that's built within a certain style of an artist, and from the production angle you were thinking about, how are people going to listen to this through headphones? How are people going to listen to this on their computer speakers, or at a live performance, these sorts of things. So having something that feels more continuous, I think, rather than something that's a bit more like this one time and the other is something like this. I see where you're coming from. Now, before we continue kind of the main questions, I'm going to have a bit of a break and kind of have a bit of a quick fire round on a couple of questions. And we're going to start with, and I know it's a big one, maybe hip-hop specific, not particularly your favorite, but something that you would really recommend, sort of an album that has kind of all the things that you love in making your own music. Just the one album.
Hard question.
It's a hard question. Yeah.
I've mentioned If You Reading This Too Late, before. Definitely someone who, as much as I like Drake, I've always liked, his production, a lot more than Drake himself.
Yeah.
And that's where 40 comes in. And I'd say, albums like If You're Reading This Too Late, Nothing Was the Same, that kind of like style that he has like influenced me probably the most. I'm gonna have to go with something else than just than Drake and 40 on this, but since I've mentioned them so much, but I do really like Jesus with Kanye.
Yeah.
And just for the simple fact of like, that's a perfect example of someone doing, most people would say you're not supposed to do that,
Yeah.
And he kind of like, ventured into this different kind of production world than what he was used to. And I feel like if you listen to that album and if you listen to it now and listen to like music that's happening like right now, you're like, wow, like he was kind of like ahead of his time, just like in that regard. But you know, as much as I don't produce music like that, I really like that album. And like for me, it just opens up to, you know, the possibility of like no limitations.
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah. I think that's good. I think that's good because you've kind of had your own thoughts about something that you like, but because of a certain reason. My next one is: would you rather work exclusively in Iceland or exclusively abroad? Because I do know you like working here, and in terms of the Icelandic culture.
Of course. I would want it to be a good kind of like a healthy, you know, mixture of it. But I've always felt like my sound could, you know, I feel like it's a little bit more seasoned to abroad. There's a lot more just opportunities abroad, you know, and definitely like on the financial side, but not that matters the most. But I feel like it's just different to find someone that's like from another part of the world, not a part of the world where I recognize any kind of things, and someone seeing something in my product where like we live on different, you know, sides of the world and grew up in different kind of environments and stuff. I always feel a little bit more just, you know, appreciated for my work, you know, abroad, just for the simple fact of, you know, someone seeing something in it, and you know, me being from where I'm from and they being from where they're from. It just like, it always just intrigues me a little bit more. But then again, there are a lot of talented people back here at home, and a very flourishing kind of scene, and always something new happening. So I would want to, you know, operate from Iceland and, you know, work with a lot of people here, you know, and be active in the scene, but have people from abroad to come here to Iceland to work, and me going, you know, flying out and stuff, and working, you know, for some, you know, period of time.
Yeah, I mean, you've had the experience of bringing artists from abroad to Iceland, and introducing them to that. Right, and how has that experience been? I mean, I wouldn't say it's the most drastic of changes in their style, but it's certainly in their approach, I feel, and maybe the reference and all that. How's that been?
Definitely seen people, you know, get inspired from this place, and you know, it doesn't need anything more than just, you know, renting a cabin or, you know, out in the countryside, and just, you know, setting up a studio and like have the scenery and everything, you know, around us. Like it sparks up, you know, different ideas, and just the vibe, you know, not to say you wouldn't have come up with those ideas anywhere else, but just like the vibe is just so immaculate, you know, like, and especially for people who have never come here before, this is a very exotic country, not in the tropical sense, but just, you know, you don't find these landscapes just about anywhere. So I definitely, you know, like having people come over here and, you know, see how they approach their music, you know. As I said, they could have gotten that idea, you know,
somewhere else,
somewhere else, but, you know, the vibe is just always kind of like right here. And the same goes for me whenever I've went, you know, abroad. You know, I spent 3 months in California last year, and for me, I was making, you know, I would say different type of music and different kind of approach, and that was most, like, nothing changed in the process really, but, you know, as, you know, technical side of the process, but like just the day to day, and as I said, the vibes were just way different.
Yeah, inspirational vibes. So, and finally then, if there was a genre of music that you'd want to go and work in, what would that be?
I'd definitely say like R&B and pop for sure. I do think hip hop is a very good... I mean, all these genres have definitely learned something from each other, but you can, if you listen to pop and R&B today, you know, a lot of the sounds and the approach, you know, they're kind of like approach, you know, but everyone does everything, you know, differently, and I'm no expert in like, oh, this is what everyone is doing and stuff, but you can hear in pop songs there is hip hop drum programming, you know, and like drum sounds and stuff, you know, already kind of
established, and they're there, and they've been there for some time.
So like whenever I've made something that is R&B-ish and, you know, pop kind of esque, I'm always like, like this is something that I do see myself kind of like, you know, venturing out to. But then again, there's a lot of like, there's a huge world in both those genres where like the hip hop doesn't exist, you know, and like there are other kind of approaches you need to take. So like there's always so much to learn, you know, as
different genres.
And you know, I've been doing this for 8 years, but at the same time, like, it's gonna take me 8 more years to get even better, you know, and then eight more, and 8, like, it's a never ending process, you know, and like
Absolutely.
I'm never satisfied with, you know, what I know. As much as I know, like I want to know even more, and you know, just dare to be great in this music world.
Yeah. As we've talked about before, you've worked with different sorts of artists from both Iceland and whatnot, and you've come from a music scene where you were very independent with yourself, and it's all based on your own work, and because the way how you present that music and your work is also very much on the independent side. You're kind of not just a music producer, you're also your own head of marketing, you're your own spokesperson, really. And so how has that been of trying to create, and how is that process going, really, of trying to create a bit of a brand, or trying to set yourself out with a particular type of not just the music, but music videos or albums, cover art, these sorts of things? Like how has that process been, and how attached do you feel to that, and what's kind of your tips for that?
So I'm if there's anything that I'm lacking in, that is the brand aspect of this music world. And it's not to say that I, you know, haven't been able to achieve some kind of identity, but I've always more leaned to just wanting to focus on the music.
Yeah.
But I do help out the artist quite a lot with, like, you know, just with feedback on like the cover arts and just, you know, marketing and branding and everything regarding the music. But, you know, I don't really want to be that person to, you know, of course you got to push your music out there and everything, and, you know, brand it and whatnot. But like I really just want to focus on, you know, being behind the scenes and, you know, be in the studio. But then again, I'm open for any kind of opportunities and you know, any new kind of directions with it. But then again, at heart, like I do truly think that, like, wherever my identity is going to go, I am going to, you know, approach it in the sense of, you know, I want to just be in the studio and just work on the music, and not going to be, you know, branding anything else but the music. So I would post the cover art and every kind of content that I feel like is, you know, makes sense for me to upload. But I do think, you know, I would want to have, you know, maybe some kind of like insights on my production, you know, side of the, you know, the album. So if you just released an album, you know, to have a video of like how I made this beat and how I mixed the song, like those kind of like elements. But yeah, but branding is everything. And I feel like, you know, if you don't want to go the most normal sense, you know, normal route today, which is, you know, to just go overload and marketing and everything, which is good. You at least gotta pride yourself on like your identity and your music. So like you gotta commit to, you know, want to post the cover art and the songs on your Instagram, you know, for example, or
your
Twitter,
social media,
and you know, let people know when the song is dropping and stuff, and share the content around the art. And all the artists that I've worked with are really good with, you know, marketing their stuff and having content around it. So I do help out, you know, getting it out there and whatnot, and like that's not a big deal for me.
No.
But you know, anything other than that, like I'm never coming up with any marketing or branding schemes on my own, you know. Like, I just want to be the producer, and you know, if producers follow me or you know, of course other people too, but like that's just kind of like my niche. And like I just want to make the music.
I totally and I think a lot of artists kind of feel the same way, especially with something that just kind of comes from your own head. You're very much, it can be a very solitary type of experience, but there's outside factors that kind of working with it. But it seems like you're trying to get a better grip at it, and then also obviously you're working with people that are doing that. So finally, just to kind of wrap it up, you know, it's a very interesting genre of music that is so huge right now and has been for years, whether that be in Iceland or around the world. You know, it might seem as like a bit of a challenge for people to go and test themselves on keyboards and on computers to try to figure out rhythms and all these sorts of things. If there's anything that you'd want to say that kind of inspires them, or just to kind of get them excited about making beats and making music in general? You know, why should people get excited about it?
In this day and age, there's so much information on the internet to learn about, you know, production and everything, and there's so much help to get. So like if this is something that really interests you, and if this is something that, you know, you think you can achieve, and you think you got this, then like I'm telling you, you got this. But
yeah,
there's just certain kind of work that needs to be put in, and just a simple fact of like to not give up is going to get you so far.
exactly.
And late gratification is definitely something that like you might face, but at the same time, if you stay consistent, make a beat every day for a year, like I'm telling you, after a year of doing that, you're going to be making 2 beats a day for a year.
Yeah.
Like it's always going to, like what I've noticed about my own kind of process is that like I make something and then I'm proud of it, and then a year later I'm like, yo, this is still good, but I just made something today where like I feel like this blows it out of the water completely.
Yeah.
So the consistency is the major key in like, you know, actually getting better and being able to, you know, bettering yourself and honing in on your skills. And it's just a simple fact of like, don't give up, because I wasn't, you know, born with any talents for anything other than just wanting to stay consistent with everything, and just always wanted to learn. So, you know, I never learned any instruments when I was younger, and you know, I've been producing now for a couple of years, and I would say I pride myself on my work, and would say it's up to par with a lot of music that's out there today. I've only achieved that because, you know, I've not been willing to give up on myself and be able to, you know, bet on myself and what I can do.
Yeah, and it's an ever-evolving process. I mean, what you were a year ago is completely different to how you are today.
Yeah.
So yeah, well, thank you very much, Huginn, FRÍO, and we'll end on the closing track of yours, which again, I really like. So yeah, thank you very much for coming.
Yeah, thank you for having me.